We're joined now by two members of the new independent group, former Labour MP Luciana Berger and former Conservative MP Anna Soubry. So welcome, both of you. Although Anna did just say, let's not talk politics, let's just talk babies. Congratulations, by the way, about a week to go.
Yeah.
So,
Not long.
We've got Dr Chris here.
We're fully prepared.
But we are going to talk politics, obviously, because that's why you're here. And I suppose, really, for anyone who is in a constituency which any of those MPs represent, they're going to go, well, why? What am I getting for this? Why did you do it?
Well, I mean, for me, my politics, my values, my views on things have not changed at all. My argument is that my party's changed. So if you go back to 2010, 2015, the Conservative Party was in coalition with the Lib Dems. Now we're, in effect, in coalition with the DUP, and I think that says everything about the change in the Conservative Party. It's left me. I've not left it.
That was a necessity. The Prime Minister made a mistake, called an election arrogantly and thought maybe we're going to walk this, and it didn't happen. So to get anything through Parliament, they had to get into bed with the DUP.
It was a bit too... I think they felt unnatural for too many of them, allegiance with them, and it speaks volumes about the state of the Tory Party, in my view.
And what about you, Luciana? Because none of you have taken this decision lightly at all.
Not
so
at all.
how bad did things get?
I mean, just think of anyone that's been a member of a party. I had been a member of the Labour Party for coming up for 2 decades, other colleagues for 30, 40 years, that you do not take this decision lightly, and it takes time to arrive at it. You know, making it and actually going through with it is another thing altogether. It's incredibly painful because this is all-encompassing. It's not just like a 9-to-5 job. It's what you do 7 days a week. It's your friendship circles. It's the people that you've worked and campaigned with. And I just got to the moment that within my own party, for so many different reasons, I just didn't feel that I could continue to be part of it. So the values that led me to join the Labour Party in the first place, those values of equality for all, opportunity for all, anti-racism against all, were being just challenged on a daily basis. And I've been very outspoken about the issues to do with anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. We've also got this, the biggest issue facing our country is Brexit at the moment. And on that, the country and my constituents deserve and need leadership on that. And my greatest concern, and I think for all of us as constituency MPs, is that we have a responsibility to ensure that we do everything possible to protect our constituents' jobs and their livelihoods. And that, for me at the moment, is the greatest thing that is at risk because of the uncertainty of what the future holds.
For the many, not the few. So that wasn't true then, in your eyes?
Well, I mean, you can look at it in lots of different ways, but one of the key elements of that manifesto was ensuring that everyone has a good job to go to that is well paid. And my greatest concern is looking at all the evaluations of what's going to be presented as a result of Brexit on every single review and report that you look at, my constituents are going to be worse off. And the idea that my constituents that work in the automotive sector, we've got JLR just up the road, who are writing to me on a daily basis saying, what is going... People are so worried, and we've got 22 working days to go until Brexit, and people still don't know what's going to happen.
I think we are making, already we've seen, and we're a bit blown away by it, truthfully. In less than a week, we're already seeing big shifts. If it's right that Theresa May is now going to take no deal off the table, as she should have done a long, long time ago, if that's right that she does that today, I think that's because of what happened last week. I think it's a large part of it. I think
Jeremy Corbyn said that he would back another referendum, and that has been alleged that it was purely to appease people who might leave.
I don't think there's any debate about that. And I'd like to think that for a large number of my now former, but thoroughly decent Conservative colleagues, especially in government, what we've done has been a bit of a guide to them. So they're now showing the courage which we desperately need. We need people to put the country first.
Do you think we will see more MPs come and join you?
Well, we know that there's many colleagues, or certainly colleagues that I've spoken to, my former shared party colleagues, who are having these thoughts and sharing them privately. And again, it's about making that commitment and making that decision. It's no easy thing to go through. I anticipate that there will be others that will follow us, and it's for everyone to do it at a time that's right for them. It's very personal. But yes, I do think that will happen.
We know lots of people agree with us in Parliament. But interestingly, it's been the reaction from
public,
ordinary people watching this programme. People come up, shake you by the hand, speak to you. We've been blown away by that.
But you don't have a manifesto because not a party at the moment.
We only had our first
of course.
inaugural meeting
very, very early
in
Nando's. But
we had a formal meeting. We had the formal
meeting in Nando's, which has no manifesto yet, not a leader yet. All of that
we are 7 days in,
of course. But you do, however, you did set out your list of 11 values.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on top of that list, Britain is a great country of which people are rightly proud. And you think, well, that's lovely, but what the hell does that mean? I mean, what are you going to do about food banks? What are you going to do about jobs? What are you going to do?
Well, I think that food bank's actually a really good example of where we're absolutely is one. I've spoken about this before I left the Tory party, which is it can't be right in this day and age for people to be having to rely on food banks, and especially people in work. That's just
but you're outside
fundamentally
the party.
wrong. And a great country as we are should not be having so many people queuing up at food banks. To me, there's no debate.
You thought universal credit was a good idea.
Sorry?
You thought universal credit was a good idea.
Well, no, universal credit, in theory, is a good idea, but the actual introduction of it, the way it's been done, has been hugely flawed. So it has caused real suffering to real people, and that's not acceptable.
And on the case of food banks connecting to universal credit, it's the delay that people are having to wait to get the money and support that they're entitled to, which means they're having to turn up at food banks. I had the first debate in Parliament about food banks back in 2013, when it was just, at the time, it was just atrocious that we had a few 100,000 people in our country having to access emergency food aid in order to feed themselves and their families. We're now over 1 million people, and for what is supposed to be the 5th richest nation in the world, that's just completely unacceptable.
Who do you look to then within the sort of group that you've got together? Who's the leader? Is there somebody starting to emerge?
You have a convener.
We have we appointed, or in fact, unanimously elected Gavin Shuker as our convener yesterday. But what we also said is that we passed and adopted some cultural commitments about actually we want to do our politics differently, and that's also what we think our
It's going to be a party. It will be a new party.
Eventually, it's bound to be.
Do you agree on, because you still come from different sides, really? Do you find that you're in alignment on a lot of things, or is there...
See, what's happened... Sorry, but what happened is that a lot of us came together over Brexit. And as we came together over Brexit, and then for some of us, we formed the People's Vote, and I can only speak for me, but obviously myself and Chuka, I realised with Chuka Ramuna and then my colleague Chris Leslie, I say colleague because he represents literally a few miles away Nottingham East, and I just looked at these guys and thought, I've got tons more in common with them than I have with a large part of my own party. And then I got to know people like Luciana, and that's what's happened, is that recognition when you look at somebody and think, I've got loads more in common than with you.
But isn't that always going to be the case? When you've got Labour way off to the left, the Tories way off to the right, there's always going to be a middle ground where other people meet.
And that's what has happened, this abandonment of the centre. And, I've got a very marginal constituency, and you only win in Broxton when you're in that centre ground, and that's what's been lost.
We've seen both parties gravitate towards both main parties. In fact, all of our politics is broken, and what's brought us together is that we can all point to points over the course of the past year or 2 years where we've worked really, really proactively in the national interest rather than this very narrow party interest. Again, it's what the country deserves. They deserve that leadership. And about, the things about how we want to do things differently. We've all got a duty to lead as members of Parliament. We've all got a responsibility to stand up. And at the moment, people are parts of parties or members of parties or MPs where they feel that they can't speak out.
You have spoken out, and you've been very open about your issue with alleged anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. Now, for us, unless I have seen the appalling abuse that you get on social media, which for 21st century Britain stuns me that happens. But there are always going to be idiots online. What about within the Labour Party? Because we don't see that. So what did you see within the Labour Party that you couldn't stomach?
Well, let's be very clear, there's some things that are alleged. I personally have seen people convicted. So, that's people that have actually gone through the criminal system. And the party itself, there's been stories that have surfaced in the media just in recent weeks alone where we've heard the evidence of what people have said within the Labour Party meetings.
But what about you personally? What did you experience? You think, I can't stand this?
So, there's just been a litany of things that, again, I have a responsibility as I was the parliamentary chair of the Jewish Labour movement to speak out on behalf of all members across the country. And those people, you don't have to be Jewish to be affected by or impacted on being witness to anti-Semitism.
No, but I'm talking about within the Labour
Indeed,
Party.
So that's within Labour Party meetings. Again, so there was a recording that we heard in the last 10 days of what happened in one particular meeting where all of the Jewish community were labelled as being responsible for the actions of the Israeli Disraeli government. I mean, there's so many different things that have happened.
The abuse,
that,
Luciana. You've had terrible... I know, I've had
so
it
I read it out in Parliament. There was a debate that we had last week about anti-Semitism, and in the House of Commons, I just read out what I've received over the course of the past week from people who, within their biographies, say they're members of the party.
Is it frightening? Is it at times?
Of course it can be when people threaten you and say that they want to do terrible things to you and or your family or to your unborn child.
So has Jeremy Corbyn been ineffective in this? Chuck has said he shouldn't be a Prime Minister, and so is he ineffective?
I said, reflecting on what's happened over the course of the past year, in the wake of what was this unprecedented event of a minority community in our country, the Jewish community, taking to Parliament Square to say enough is enough. You have to look at the catalogue of things that have happened since then to see how we've gone backwards or how the party went backwards, not forwards. And I felt I had a responsibility to do everything possible within the party to try and change that. And then when I couldn't, it was time to say, for me, enough really was enough, and I couldn't affect change, and I had to leave.
I mean, I'm older than any of you, and no, this is true. But in all seriousness, I mean, I sat in on the first debate that we had last year, and to have members of Parliament standing up and explaining the abuse. And I can't believe that it was then 2018, now 2019, that we have gone to such an extreme, to such a situation where I've met members of the Jewish community who say, why has my synagogue got security guards? This is new, this never happened before. This is appalling and it has to stop.
It really does.
And the official record shows that, we've seen an increase of nearly 20% of anti-Semitic incidents across the country over the course of the past year, in terms of different types of... it obviously manifests itself in different ways. And let's be very clear, what happens online is as detrimental as what happens in person, that it can have far-reaching consequences. Having listened to the victim impact statements I've heard in court of people whose, its impact on their ability to work and to maintain relationships with family and friends.
There are people who will go... who will leave our country, Jewish people who will leave our country if Jeremy Corbyn becomes Prime Minister. That's a shocking indictment.
We are going to have to leave it there. Thank you both very much for coming in.
So we can't talk about the 70s and your retro look.
Come and join us for fashion.
I'm old enough to remember the 70s.
So am I.
But thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you. And good luck and congratulations.
Thank you very much.